there, it's Jane. I wanted to show you a couple of cards I made with pattern paper, and I'm calling this Kicking It Up a Notch. I grabbed some pattern paper in my stash, and if you're like me, you've got tons of it. And sometimes I love it, but it gets just a little bit boring. So I thought I would just add something to it. So I ended up not using the pumpkin background stencil, and I just went to my stash and I grabbed some stencils. Now, I am not sure if all of the products I'm using are available, and I apologize for that in advance, but I just wanted you to be able to go into your own stash and find things that you love, and there's not always a need to go out and buy things new all the time. So I'm using my Tim Holtz flat box. I sprayed the back of my stencil with some pixie spray. I went to my stash and found my Halloween paper. Sorry about the head, but sometimes you have to get right on top of your project. After I sprayed the pixie spray, I let it dry just a tad. So now I'm grabbing my, what is this? This is my Distress, I can't even say it, Distress Spray Stain. Whoa, that was a hard one. In Brush Pewter. And I sprayed it on top of the pattern paper and I set it aside to dry. So now I'm looking through my stash trying to find something that I want to do for my second card. And I really didn't necessarily want to make Halloween cards. I wanted to make more like fall cards. So I have my Favorite Things Persimmon ink, and I'm using my Pink and Main blending brush, and I'm blending it on top of this because I thought it would add a little bit of interest. And I'm going to show you my process here, and I'm peeling it back, and I didn't really like it because you really couldn't see much. So then I thought, well, let me grab some brown. Well, the only brown I have is Distress Walnut. Peeled it back. Didn't like that either. So then I thought, well, maybe let me grab some embossing powder and do some embossing powder on top of this. So I grabbed my Versamark and I just got it in every single crevice, and I just rubbed it all over, and I grabbed this Ranger Enchanted Gold embossing powder. Now, normally you put an anti-static powder tool on top, but because I wasn't planning on embossing anything, I did not do this. So I have a lot of extra flecks of embossing powder, so I just grab my paintbrush and I just brush it all away. Make sure your heat gun is good and hot before you turn it to your pattern paper so your paper doesn't warp. And the magic of embossing powder, I could watch it melt all day long. And look how cool that looks. I'm really, really happy with the way this came up. Remember, we're stepping up our pattern paper a notch. This is where my spider web, and I love the way this came out as well. So here's the two backgrounds that I made. And so now I need to cut this spider web so it's in the middle. I know I wanted my pattern paper to be 4 by 5 1/4. So I measured from the center, and I 2 inches on each side, cut those, and 5 1/4. I measured that, and it's from the center, and cut those, and I cut each ends. That way I have a 4 by 5 1/4 piece of cardstock that is the spider webs in the center. That's why I love that T ruler. I grabbed some cream cardstock from my stash, and I really didn't like that, so I matted it on some black cardstock. I thought that little mat just gave it all the oomph that it needed, and I just glued it on there. And that mat is cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I have some black felt in my stash. I glued that to the back of it as well. And then I glued all of that to the back, the front, not the back, the front of that cream card. I love these Birch Press dies. I grabbed the LINGO Hugs. And then because of that brush pewter, I grabbed the Tim Holtz Ranger KRAFT metallic cardstock. So I cut the letters 3 times out of white and 1 out of the silver KRAFT metallic, and I'm just layering them all together. And I cut the background out of black. And if you're not sure how to lay it all out, just take a look at the reverse. And then I have these Tim Holtz Idea-ology Big Chat sticker sentiments, I call them. And I just put a little foam tape on the back of that just to pop them up. And I'm going to grab my T ruler and make sure everything is all even. And that is almost the completion of card number 2. I know I buzzed by it, through it, but it is a quick and easy card to make. You just need to get your pattern paper and figure out what you want to do to put on top. In this situation, it was stencil. So I cut this one down the center because I had this really, really good idea on how I wanted to handle it. But if you look on the left, I did not cut them evenly. The one on the right is wider than the one on the left. So I got this chocolate cardstock. I've got a card 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and now I had to go to plan B. Now what am I going to do with these uneven card strips? So I cut another piece of chocolate cardstock 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm lining up my embossed pattern paper on the top and the bottom with a strip down the middle. So this is what you do when you mess up when you cut. Nothing ever goes to waste. You just use it again. Put something heavy on top to let it dry. And as you can see, I cut a little orange strip out of My Favorite Things Persimmon. And then this Simon Says stamp, Big Thanks, is the stamp set that I'm using. And I stamped that on the white cardstock. You can see I kind of laid out the stamp right there on the white cardstock. I'm going to stamp it with my Misty. I couldn't find my magnet, so I used some purple tape to lay it all down. And I'm using Ranger, I believe it's Java ink is what I'm using here. It's brown. And I'm stamping that about 3 or 4 times because I really wanted a really good dark impression. And I love the way this came out. And again, I did not really want to make a Halloween card, but I grabbed my Halloween paper because I just have so much of it. And I wanted to use my pattern paper. I'm tired of buying it and not using it. And rather than making my own background out from scratch, why not bump up the backgrounds that I already have, the pattern paper. So I'm cutting these edges off so I can actually see what I'm working with here. And there is my card base. I'm gluing on that strip of my MFT Stamps Persimmon, and I'm lining up my All the Thanks. I'm trying to get a rough idea how long it is because I want to pop it up on foam tape, and I don't want to be putting foam. No, I'm sorry. That's not at all what I did. In this particular situation, I took 3 layers of white cardstock from my stash, cut it, and layered it. So I grabbed these Trinity Stamps gold baubles from my stash, and I have love that little Trinity Stamps holder. And I just put a little bit of glue on the tips of all those points of that Altenew leaf die. I'm sorry, I meant stencil. And that stencil is available, and I have linked everything that I could find in the below. So now I want to step up the envelope and make that a little bit fancy too. So I grabbed that same stencil, that same persimmon ink, and that is how my envelope came out. I love the way it came out. Now I'm sorry this video is so fast. I don't know what I was thinking when I was doing it. Maybe I thought you'd be bored with all the processes. But they're really simple, easy cards. They're just stepping up the pattern paper. So I put a piece of white inside that brown cardstock so you have a way to write a personal message. And I really love the way these 2 cards came out. I love the fact that I took pattern paper and was able to turn it into something a little bit different and keep everything really quick and easy. So here's another close-up look of the spider web that I used with these Distress spray on top of the pattern paper with a really simple die and a couple of sticker sentiments. And then this is the plaid one that I use with the Altenew leaf stencil with a little bit of embossing powder and 1 simple sentiment. Hope you like them. Go on and step up your pattern paper. Just kick it up a notch.